Welcome to The Prize Inside. A chiropractor's journey in everyday holistic health and vitality. Here, your host, Dr. Jeremy Myers, delves into the remarkable journeys of everyday people who have embraced the path to health and healing. Through his practice, Dr. Jeremy encounters inspiring stories of profound transformation and the power of true healing within each of us. Stay tuned as we discuss various holistic topics and unlock the healing potential that lies within us all.
All right. Good evening, everybody. Welcome. Sorry about for the long hiatus last week. We were in a state finals competition for my little robotics team. I'm kind of excited because as I was going, I'm really getting into, doing this presentation for you guys. Love all the different things. Remember to comment too, so I can see your questions as we go. We're probably going to do another one. I'm trying to decide. It might be like Wednesday night. That one will be a little different of a topic. There's a guy I really like. He's a podcaster, and he does X or Twitter. And he does a really good job of, his name's Scott Adams, and he does a really good job of doing like local or news, political news, and just kind of reading the highlights of the day. And I thought we would do something similar. I could do something where we could go into the newest, latest, and greatest. Hopefully I get some information from you guys as well, and just see what's the new headlines, what's the new topics that are out there that we can kind of look at from a chiropractic or a holistic perspective. Remember, tonight is all about, living from the inside out, as I say, or, nature needs no help, just no interference. So when we look at a new article, how do we approach that? And tonight is going to be like that. So we're going to talk about a very interesting topic. It's been interesting in the last few years because I keep seeing it more and more. It's becoming more and more prevalent, to the point of that Vertigo itself. It's fascinating that now they have places for vertigo. And so what I wanted to do is kind of do a deep dive in for my patients, as well as just anyone that is out there that is having trouble with that. We're seeing it a lot in the office. A lot of medical are having issues as well. And a lot of times that vertigo situation, what is that? A lot of times somebody will be going on their day-to-day, everything. And then all of a sudden they lay on their side one day and the room starts spinning. And so we'll go through some definitions of that. And so hopefully it will be worth your time. That's all I ask, right? All right. So here's some good info that I found lately. Oh, and I'll pull that up later. Always remember, if you want to get emails and old shows, we're going to put in www.tribe1.substack.com. So if you I'll put it in the comments there. That is a place where you can actually get on the email list, so what topics we're going through. And sometimes I'll send like a recording of last week's topic if you forgot, or you couldn't make it or whatever. Because I know Sunday night is 8. Most people are chilling down. I really enjoy it because all my stuff is done. So I wanted to make sure I could do it on a consistent basis. So that's one place to go. The other one is look up The Prize Inside on Rumble. Rumble would be another excellent place to go. Jeremy Myers on YouTube is another one. You can go looking that up and subscribe there. All of those places will have like the old videos. And if you like podcast, which I really like, this is in an audio version on Spotify as The Prize Inside. You'll find it. That's where I actually have had most of my success, honestly, with like getting people going. Anyway, so that's I've had like almost 3,000 downloads, which is fantastic. So I hope I get better as we go. And because of my 1% tribe, I probably will. So this will be good. You guys will tell me, right? All right. So here's an interesting article that I found. Best time to take supplements. That's always a question. You don't know when. There's a lot of different ones. Each one has very specifics. So a lot of times that's why it's always tough when somebody's asking me, like, what time should I take these? And a lot of times there should be a guide, right there. Sometimes I don't know, which one is the ideal. So these are a few that I found that we can start talking about. So the best time to take supplements. Magnesium. Magnesium is one that likes to be in the body at night. So that one's more of a PM kind of supplementation. Zinc is with food during the day. So a lot of times you want to have zinc. Zinc's a very powerful one. If you take too much zinc, you can start competing with stuff like copper and, those kind of things. So you want to make sure you take just enough of either of those, magnesium and zinc, exactly what they recommend, all those kind of things, but take them in the proper place and you can use them. So zinc is a good one, usually with some kind of food and probably in the morning or in the day. Calcium, you want to divide that. Calcium in doses, and we'll talk about that as well. Calcium, you want to do it throughout the day if you can kind of remember those. B vitamins, a lot of times they're AM situations, but with meals, and sometimes they're kind of like calcium where you can divide them throughout the day. So those are some good supplementations. I always recommend, if you're going to take something, like kind of Google what's the best time. You'll usually get it. Oh, good. Ginkgo helps. Brian is on, baby. Ginkgo helps a lot with a lot of different things. So this is going to be pretty sweet conversation on the Vertigo part. So here's another article we had. Infertility is on the rise, which is it's a huge concern. Not only in the US, but Japan has fallen off the map. So don't think this is just United States only, and we're going after that. It's the society we have built, right? So we have all these things, and most of the things that is causing this infertility is toxins. Remember, in my chiropractic world, there's three things: thoughts, toxins, trauma. Okay, so these are all environmental impacts. So thoughts, your own thoughts. Toxins are environmental toxins, which is what they're finding in a lot of these infertility cases, and traumas, right? So the toxins they're finding are what they call, and they even call it now something pretty significant, endocrine disrupting chemicals, EDC. EDCs are in plastics. There is a ton of chemicals in these plastics that are causing some of this infertility, and that can be a major issue. EMFs, we did a whole show on that. So remember, EMFs are the electromagnetic frequencies off a computer, off cell phones. They believe that has a very big connection to some of the infertility problems. The biggest thing is like, when we look at those, these are things that are coming into focus, and we really need, as a nation and a country and a world, to understand these, because Japan could go into what they call, their entire population could collapse on them if there's not enough infertility. If there's too much infertility, not enough babies, they can't replace themselves. And America is very, very close to that as we speak now. So that's a very big concern. This one was kind of cool. Melatonin, we kind of like don't want your kids to get on it because it's a hormone. It helps you sleep, but it doesn't sleep all night, and then your body gets used to it. It doesn't produce its own melatonin. That's true. And a lot of times you got to be super careful with your melatonin. But there's a new study out there for my elderly population. It actually not only can help you sleep, but it also can fight against Alzheimer's. So that's kind of cool. So actually, melatonin might not be as bad an enemy as you're older, than when you're a kid. When you're a kid, the body needs to be able to produce those hormones and all those kind of things. Melatonin, and maybe as we age, could be a good sleep aid, and it also helps kind of helps against Alzheimer's, which is kind of cool. And then the last thing is high blood pressure. High blood pressure increases our risk of Alzheimer's and dementia. One of the things we know that, right? But one of the things that happens is like having blood pressure. So that's one of those goals, nutrition goals, health goals in your whole life that maybe you work towards, right? These are high blood pressure can be something that's very preventable. And so if that is true, then let's change our way of being, right? And get that blood pressure down. Do that with your doctor, right? But make that a big focus. If you have, genetic links to Alzheimer's, dementia, that's a thing. We want to make sure that all those, give us our best opportunity, as we go forward, right? All right. So let's talk about a little vertigo. I have someone on the chat, I will not mention names, that is dealing with this currently. So we're going to go through this in a chiropractic perspective, because in our office, we see a lot of vertigo, a lot of headaches, those kind of things. And with vertigo, it can be a game changer if we can figure it out. Okay. So I'm going to give you every aspect of what occurs in the vertigo situations, because right now we're only talking about crystals, like resetting these crystals in our ear. Okay. So there's a lot more to it, which is really cool that you guys are here tonight. So hopefully this will be worth the watch. All right. So here we go. This is a guide to combating vertigo, dizziness, those kind of things. This is the vertigo. We'll go through a definition. There's a few different ways vertigo happens. They call this one BPP8, BPPV, positional vertigo, essentially. But what occurs sometimes is, you have to understand the different kinds of vertigo that could be in there. All right. So what are we going to go over tonight? The key things to help with understanding why vertigo is happening to you, understanding the multiple reasons the vertigo can be present, and what you can do to improve these conditions. And I'm going to throw a couple insights in there that I've seen personally that aren't in the record, basically. And so we're going to add that, what you can do to improve these conditions. And then what I was just talking about, it's not studied thoroughly what me and you are going to talk about, but through chiropractic's approach of deductive reasoning, right? So deductive reasoning is where chiropractic believes that the human body is essentially perfect, and something interfered with that perfection. And that's why we end up with some kind of condition. So we look at it a lot different in that regard versus just looking at the condition itself. Okay. So that's what 100% Tribe tonight is all about. So what is vertigo and why is it important? Okay. So this is the definition. I can't remember where. I think this is WebMD. So it's a sensation of whirling and loss of balance associated particularly with looking down from a great height, or caused by a disease affecting the inner ear or vestibular nerve. Giddiness. That's what it used to be called. This is because it is becoming a very common problem, usually starting to get more common as we age. The concern for me personally is I see this condition starting to really affect a lot of people, and more than I have in previous years. So as you're seeing this, you're going, okay, how do we approach this, to make a stand, because we're seeing it so much more. And hopefully I won't be too long-winded, guys. I apologize if I am. All right. So here are what the medical causes. Okay. So this don't keep your mind shut to these situations, but what are the medical causes? So BPPV, which is positional vertigo. It's benign. So benign means It's not deadly. Paroxysmal. I can't remember what that means. Positional. Positional means it's when you move your head in a certain spot. Vertigo. Okay. So these initials stand for benign, paroxysmal, positional vertigo. It occurs when the tiny calcium particles, they're called canaliths, are dislodged from their normal location and collect in the inner ear. This is somewhat true, and we'll go over that. The inner ear sends signals to the brain about the head and body movements relative to gravity. It helps you keep balance. So one of the things in medical is they believe that the calcium areas, these little calcium particles are called canalith. These crystals is what you hear a lot. These crystals got rear-ended. They're not in the same position. Okay. And we're going to go through why that's sort of true, but not completely. Okay. Meniere's disease. Meniere's is another name that they use. This is an inner ear disorder thought to be caused by a buildup of fluid and changing pressure in the ear. It can cause episodes of vertigo along with ringing of the ears and tinnitus. Some people call it tinnitus, right? And hearing loss. Okay, so Meniere's is different than vertigo, but Meniere's has vertigo as one of its three keys. All right. So look and explore. We're exploring tonight. We're not doing a condition to just do a condition. Okay. So we're going through this to show you what is actually occurring in there and what could be the possibilities. Okay. What are the causes continued? So you can also have what they call vestibular neuritis or labyrinthitis. Chat, if you're in there, what does itis mean? That's your quiz tonight. If you're going to be a holistic person, they both have endinitises. What does itis mean? Neuritis, labyrinthitis. This is an inner ear problem, usually related to an infection, usually viral. The infection causes inflammation. Oh, I gave it away. Inflammation in the inner ear around the nerves that are important for helping the body sense balance. So I'm not seeing a ton of chat in the old itis. So itis always means inflammation. Okay. So inflammation around the nerve, around the labyrinth that we'll talk about. There's this fluid, cool labyrinth that your body makes. It's God. I don't know how God thinks of all this stuff, but you actually have basically a gyroscope in your ear on both sides made of fluid, which is fascinating to me. And so that can be an itis as well, not allowing this fluid to move. Okay. So most of the problems, most what they can deduce is why the vertigo happens is a head or neck injury, brain problems such as a stroke or a tumor, certain medications that actually cause ear damage, migraine headaches. Okay, so those are the initial ones. Now we're going to go into some holistic causations that we want to kind of dig a little deeper. Okay, a little deeper. So head injuries, brain problems, some medications. We'll talk about that one a little bit later. Migraine headaches. Okay. Okay, so let's start looking at this through a chiropractic perspective. So, a chiropractic perspective, let's look for the why. Why does nature need to know help? Just no interference. So, let's start with the first ear, the ear crystals. So, how are we doing this? How are we knocking them out of positions? Okay, so I apologize. I think I'm going to be able to. Oh, sweet. I did it. Okay. So let's see if I can zoom in on that. I hope you guys can see that. Oh, go back. Okay. So this, hopefully, let me see. Oh, I don't know if I can zoom in. I apologize, guys. It's a pretty small picture. So if you can go in there, what I'm trying to show you here is the labyrinth. Okay. So no, I don't want to go there. I want to do this YouTube channel. Oh, stay right there, guys. I did not do this correctly. I should have put these off to put them in the presentation. because I'm not on Zoom. Okay. 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 All right. I'm going to stop sharing this for a minute. I'm going to present my screen. There we go. Okay. So here we go. This is a short video real quick on what this kind of looks like.
PPV is one of the most common causes of dizziness. There are two types of balance organs in the inner ear, the semicircular canals and the otolith organs. The otolith organs contain crystals of calcium carbonate, which are constantly being shed, dissolved, and replaced by new ones.
Okay, before we keep going, if you look at that little picture and as the video is going and it's moving around, that's where the calcium carbonate crystals are. These little labyrinth looking loops have some cool lymph type liquid in there. And you see how they go in several different directions. This is what tells your brain where the position of your head is. So it's basically the gyroscope, like at trying to find your middle ground there. So just remember that.
If too many crystals fall off at one time and the patient looks up or lies down before they dissolve, they can fall into one of the semicircular canals. When the patient rises, they don't fall out, they fall in and become trapped in the canal. Upon lying down, the crystals fall through the canal, causing an intense spinning that lasts a few seconds until the crystals fall to the lowest point. When rising, the crystals fall in the other direction, which again triggers dizziness. Until the crystals are dissolved, the canal may not work properly, and chronic disequilibrium as well as positional vertigo may be present. This will continue until the crystals in the canal dissolve or are moved out of the canal with special exercises or maneuvers. Even untreated, most cases of BPPV resolve within 14 days.
Okay, so let's go back to this. All right, let's go. Where am I at? Okay. Oh, stop sharing. Okay. So what essentially that video is showing is, remember, what we're hearing in medical is you have some crystals and they move in the wrong place. And that is actually kind of true. However, what it is we made too many crystals. And these too many crystals are building up on the top of that little shelf, if you looked at it. And now we have crystals that get free. Okay. And so one of the things that we're going to talk about in the chiropractic perspective in just a minute is if our head position isn't correct to the earth, if our ears are not over our shoulder and we have too much head posture, how are that gyroscope that's working in your ear going to be correct? So one of the things we see as chiropractors for years is ear infections in children. One of the reasons chiropractic and getting a child checked for their ear infection is so vital is because when they have fluid behind their ears, if you can kind of look at me, if my head is tilted one direction and one ear it has different canal, right? So this child has these two inner tubes that go like this. If I tip one, that tube sits differently than the other tube. So what occurs is fluid can build up in there, where nature wanted these perfect tubes that came down this way. Now, think of that in the perspective of years and years of over time, we have a crooked head. Maybe we have never got our, neck properly aligned with the posture. Maybe we're looking at our phone so much that we're down this way. So now we have forward head posture. These are all things and why when people get vertigo, chiropractic can help a lot. It helps almost every single time, and maybe it's temporary at the time. And sometimes some people's is so severe, it was a concern of mine because of how long they were, still present with those. You might feel good after an adjustment for a while, but one of the reasons is you can see when you reposition everything, those crystals kind of go away. So those crystals need to be dissolved. We're making too many of those crystals. And that's one thing I wanted to show you. So that's something to kind of keep in mind. I think I have one other video I want to show you here. And then, hang on. I apologize for this, guys. I thought I was amazing. Okay. This one kind of shows it better. Okay. Go to share screen. Okay, this one.
If you still think that's the best way to make money in this economy, I'm sorry, you got it wrong. There's a little...
Okay. We're going to go through this one a little.
The vestibular system is responsible for the body's equilibrium. It maintains balance and provides awareness of the body's spatial orientation. Vestibular sensory organs detect changes in the head's positions and movements and transmit this information to various regions of the brain. Projections to the brainstem trigger reflex pathways that lead to compensatory actions to maintain stability or reestablish equilibrium.
So you can see these little tubes. These little tubes are super important. Think of these with tubes in your car. They have, let's say they have, antifreeze fluid in them. So they have, and the inside there is all this like lymph system. But what it's doing is it's basically creating this beautiful labyrinth to be able to tell where you're at positionally. And then that tells your nervous system in your brain what to do as far as where your head position is. It's actually insanely brilliant.
While projections to the cortex provide perception of gravity and movement. Examples of vestibular reflex pathways include the vestibulo-ocular reflex that controls eye muscles to keep visual objects in focus while the head is moving. It does so by moving the eyes in the opposite direction as the head. And the vestibulo-spinal reflex that senses a potential loss of balance and activates body muscles to keep the body from falling. The sensory part of the vestibular system is located in the inner ear on each side of the body. It consists of 3 semicircular canals that sense rotational movements, such as when the head is turning, and 2 otolithic organs that sense head positions, as well as straight-line motions, such as when riding in a car or elevator. The 3 semicircular canals, or ducts, are oriented approximately at a right angle to each other, each corresponding roughly to one of the 3 planes of motion, turning.
So if you can think of like x-axis, z-axis, go back to your geometry class where you have several different planes of motion. That's where it gets interesting.
Left and right, nodding up and down, and tilting to a side. They contain a fluid called endolymph. Each canal has an enlargement at one end called an ampulla. Within the ampulla, there are hair cells embedded in a gel-like structure named cupula. When the head turns, the ducts that are located on the same plane of motion rotate, but the fluid lags behind because of inertia. This causes the fluid to briefly move in the opposite direction as the head, and either push or pull on the cupula, bending the cilia on the hair cells and thus activating them to send nerve impulses to the brain. The direction of the bend determines if the signals generated are excitatory or inhibitory. Because the 2 sides of the head are mirror images, a head turn generates excitatory signals on one side and inhibitory signals on the other.
I just wanted to show you guys this whole video because it's sweet. Like just the whole concept of what God has designed blows your mind. Like how this whole system works in just a few liquids. It's amazing.
The 2 otolithic organs are 2 patches of hair cells oriented nearly perpendicular to each other, the saccule being vertical and the utricle being horizontal. The cilia of these cells are embedded in a gel-like layer sprinkled with calcium carbonate crystals.
Boom. Okay, so this is where it's at. So you'll see these calcium carbonate crystals. This is what everybody's talking about. It's on the utricle and saccula. Okay, so these are these little areas of cells, and then they have these little carbonate crystals or ear rocks.
Called otoconia, commonly known as ear rocks. The crystals add weight to the layer, pulling it down with gravity. When the head is in upright position, the gelatinous layer bears down evenly on the cells of the utricle. The cilia remain straight and no signals are generated. On the vertical saccule, however, The heavy gel is pulled down by gravity at one end.
See how that works? So the calcium, the head rocks, ear rocks, calcium carbonate allow the gel to be heavier, and then it pulls those cells. So then that makes those cells, the little fans or hairs on the cells trigger a movement, and then that will trigger your brain to do what it's supposed to with its eyes, with your eye movement.
Bending the cilia, generating nerve impulses. The reverse is true when the head is horizontal. Other head positions are determined by a combination of signals coming from both organs. Vestibular sensory organs detect not the motion itself, but changes in the rate of motion, specifically acceleration or deceleration. For example, when a person is sitting in a car that starts to move, the heavy gel-like layer of the utricle lags behind at first, bending the cilia back, activating the hair cells. The more sudden the car starts, the greater the stimulation. Once the car is in stable motion, the gel catches up with the rest of the tissue and no activation results. Similar events occur in the saccule during an elevator ride, up or down.
Yeah, that's when it sucks for Jeremy. The elevator ride up or down. Okay, so now that I've shown you that, we can go back to the conversation. So if you see that, now you understand where the ear rocks, the calcium carbonate crystals are that we're all talking about. It's on these like nerve, these little cells that are trying to stay upright, and then there's a gel over the top that allows it basically to be the handle. So whichever way gravity takes it, it's going to be that. Now, as we go through the causations, understand what we're looking at, because once we do that, it'll make a lot more sense of like how we can prevent, especially the chronic vertigo situation. Okay. So especially in a holistic situation as well. So what I'm going to talk about now that I've shown you those two, now it's going to make more sense of, so this is where the position is, right? In your ear. So if my body posture is now forward head, okay? So this is what this is. This is what they call forward head posture. Probably 85% of the population now has it because of our lifestyle. It has nothing to do with people. It's just the way it is. We have cell phones, computers, everything we do is down. So what happens is like eventually our head is down beyond our ears. In a perfect world, what grandma always told you is keep your head up and your shoulders back. Ears over your shoulders, right? What's occurring is now don't look at the spine. We know that's a problem, those kind of things, but look at the position of your ear and that gyroscope that is supposed to be way back here and centered to a center mass where it's easily moved. The more I come forward, the more you're going to have issues with your brain even understanding where your head is. I hope that makes sense. And that's one reason why chiropractic adjustments work, because once you get adjusted and your posture is like way better for that instant, you feel better. And we always hope that it'll move enough fluid through there and it'll start balancing out where your dizziness will go away. Now that we've done the physical part, so this is the physical forward head posture conversation. Doesn't mean it's always the cause. That just as like everything else. So we have to go into all the different aspects. So let's look at some other holistic stuff that it could contribute to this. Okay. So there's some other holistic issues that we need to address on top of just where your physical head is on your head, on your shoulders is. One of the things that causes vertigo is low blood sugar. Okay. So a low blood sugar can cause, a general vertigo. One of the things that people don't realize is low blood sugar is also kind of one of your pre-markers. If it's a chronic low blood sugar, you have a marker to be possibly start having a high blood pressure. Like that's where high blood sugar with diabetes and all those kind of things. So one of the things we always were trained holistically is if somebody comes in and they're feeling like they have a lot of sugar issues, let's say they're overweight and they want to lose and blah, 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 but their sugar is always low. It's actually a marker over time. The sugar is going to go high. So remember that low blood sugar can be a huge thing. That's why it's imperative to like look at your metabolism, understanding fixing the metabolism so we don't have the highs and lows of bad blood sugar, right? Metabolism and those things. Low blood pressure starting to become a very big issue with almost everybody getting medicated for blood pressure issues. We really, really, really need to take a hard look at the blood pressure, situation with your doctor, those kind of things, because if you're getting vertigo, that could be a big one. Low adrenal function, because adrenal gland, you probably heard this. Some of you've been in this holistic thing for a long time. And the low adrenals, the adrenal gland is a one that sits right over your thyroid, right? And so, I'm sorry, the adrenals are the high stress hormone and high stress gland that takes on, your major stresses of your life. A lot of times when that is off, it can cause some major issues. It actually causes some low blood pressure. It can cause those kind of things. There's a lot of medicines out there that are going to mess with a certain thing that we're going to talk about. And then mucus and sinuses is a very common one. If we have that, I need to do one on sinuses, actually. I'll do a talk on sinuses. But for right now, understand like salt is a very nice thing for like really sinusy people. That's why they say go to the beach, in the ocean, and your sinuses clear up pretty well. There's a reason there's salt in there, and that salt really helps a little bit. Not that I'm saying like suck a bunch of salt in, but make sure, there's some cool ways to introduce salt, especially sea salt, into your thing if you have a lot of mucus issues. And then the big one that I wanted to talk about the most tonight, it's the most eye-opening for me looking at this issue, is we must get rid of the excess calcium. If we have too much calcium in our body, it ends up in this middle ear. Okay, so it gets into this inner ear. That is a proven thing. And one of the reasons it happens, we'll go through that a little bit. Sometimes we either take too much calcium. Well, we'll go through it in the next slide. Okay, so low blood sugar. Many times low blood sugar is a catalyst to being pre-diabetic. Changing our diets and reversing our blood sugar issues can help tremendously. The low blood sugar one, I would recommend Dr. Rachel as somebody to talk to because she can actually fix your metabolism. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of eating habit type situation, but we can do it. Get rid of sugar is another one to kind of rebalance that metabolism. But it's a big problem. Like low blood sugar, people run at that with low energy. And then they don't know why when they become diabetic really quickly after that. So kind of diabetes right now, especially type 2, is shocking people when they get it. And it shouldn't, because you feel great until that moment, right? So we want to start looking at that type of thing because it can also help limit your vertigo situation as well. Low blood pressure. So low blood pressure is a big deal because think of where your heart is. So your heart is below your brain, correct? So if I have low blood pressure, how am I supposed to get the blood that my body needs to heal things, to flow things, to move in my head if my blood pressure is too low? It's just a gravity thing at that point, right? So sometimes low blood pressure can be a huge issue in our society, and as we age, we need a balanced blood pressure, not just driving it down to the bottom of the barrel because it leads to things not working properly. Yes, high blood pressure is an issue, but also is low blood pressure. So we have to be careful of that. It's also linked to these low adrenals that we're going to talk about. And I'm going to do a whole adrenal talk at some point as well, because there's so many good things you can do for those adrenals as well. Okay, so we'll do a little bit of touching on the low adrenals. Understand that there's a lot more things that we can do for this area. It's your low energy. A lot of times if somebody takes an adrenal supplement, it is like, right away that you are like, dang, my energy got extremely good all the time. Dr. Geimer, he believed almost everything, and he's not that wrong. Like, I don't think he's that wrong. He believed a lot of probably 80-90% of our population, it was low adrenal function, because it's once it's low, your body doesn't react. It's your reflexes. It's your body's reflexes, similar to vitamin D. When we talk about vitamin D, is but if you have low vitamin D, your alarm system to your house is off or really set low, right? So if I have low vitamin D, the robber comes into my house, grabs my stuff, leaves, and then the police come. Where if you set your vitamin D is at a good level, the robber comes in, which is like the virus or bug, and he can't even shake the window, and the police are already in your driveway. Okay, so adrenals are very similar to that, as far as reflexes, as far as like energy and getting that energy for the rest of your body. So these are some supplements you can start taking to help your adrenals out, because these can be big functions of why your vertigo is there. So vitamin C. Okay, so vitamin C, usually in sauerkraut, really good places to find some good vitamin C. You can get it as a good supplement regardless. Ascorbic acid's pretty good. Sauerkraut, greens, bell peppers, they have a lot of good vitamin C. If I was doing a vertigo situation where I had the vertigo, I would probably try to do a lot more in the diet of vitamin C, because then you start getting in that habit. Copper is one that's interesting. Copper is a very big one that can be linked to this low adrenal function. We're seeing that more and more. That's why you got to make sure you have very specific, like zinc, magnesium, all those things, because they can compete with that. Potassium and vitamin K. So these are ones that help with kind of increasing your adrenals without doing an adrenal supplement. Now, we're going to do a whole talk on adrenals by itself. So just remember that we'll have a lot more options for low adrenals. Okay, so sinusy mucus issues, these are some of the reasons the vertigo happens. So sometimes like chronic mucus in sinuses can be an issue, and starting to do a little bit of salt, because we've made that a big enemy of the world, and it's not salt, though. I'm talking like sea salt. There's some very specific ways that you can treat the mucus, holistically, that can be really effective. And we'll probably do one of those talks as well. Literally do that with this subject. Okay, so this is the big one that I want to talk about the most tonight. Let's talk about this. So if you go back and look at that video, you saw, let me see if I can go back there. Let's go back to where we saw the little salt crystals. This one's a good one. Okay. So if you look at this picture and those little salt crystals in that fluid, what has been occurring is with that salt crystals in there, that those little salt crystals, we start accumulating too much of this calcium. So we have too much of this calcium that creates those. So calcium carbonate creates those. So if we get too much calcium, then we have overproduced into this little gel. And then once we start moving in a certain way, that overproduction ends up into, if you can remember where these are, right? These little cells are in this like utricle and this saccula area. But then this whole tube is full of lymph fluid. Okay. So if these calcium carbonate little things go through, get into these tubes, then we start having our major vestibular problems. Okay. So when we start getting our major vertigo issues is when these little calcium carbonates, we make too much of them, and then they end up accumulating in these tubes that are God's like perfect way to, create this gyroscope that we know where our head position is at all times. That's why you get vertigo after a car accident as well, because you have such a movement. You get these like this calcium carbonate splashing basically off of there, and it goes into the lymph fluid, and now we got vertigo. Okay. Typically, medically, we go, okay, well, there's stuff to like get rid of the calcium. That's one way that they actually treat this thing. Is one of the medications is getting the calcium out. So they'll use like a calcium uptake kind of medicine. So what we want to do is make sure that we're taking the right amount of calcium and not having too much of it. Okay. Okay. So, and that's why it was important to bring up that little article I found in proper calcium supplementation. We have to do that correctly, because if we have too much calcium, which is very common in one very big condition, and that's why you're seeing it in this population, osteoporosis. So osteoporosis, the reason they're seeing this more could be, there's two reasons. In a holistic world, osteoporosis is a guy named Dr. Versatile taught me a lot of the nutrition situation that I know. And one of the things that stuck out to me very, very strongly was when he was talking about osteoporosis and why women would have that. One of the reasons that happens is genetically, women have what he would consider like a softer bone, where your actual skeletal structure is easier to take calcium and leach it from it to use it in other organs. So his philosophy was that if somebody had osteoporosis, it was telling you there was some other organ needing that calcium. I hope that makes sense. It really makes sense to me. It resonates, because it's like, where did the osteoporosis come from? So what he was saying is, like, a lot of times you would see, a good example is, most of us have had the grandmother or aunt that was very hunched over. And one of his philosophies was that that lady that had the huge hump was because their heart needed the calcium, and the closest calcium was the bone. Now in a male, the calcium's not as free from the bone as it is in a female. So the body it always protects your brain and your heart first. And so that's where these are coming from. I have another concern with osteoporosis. Not only are you pulling this calcium, and now you have this excess calcium possibly in your bloodstream, but we also supplement a lot with calcium, which is not a bad thing, because you're trying to replace those. But sometimes we overdo our calcium, which then starts messing with everything else. So let's say that's why it's super important for magnesium, calcium, and some of these other elements like copper, potassium, all of these to be very critical, the correct doses, and not too much, because you can do too much calcium, and the too much calcium can lead to creating these calcium carbonate crystals in your ear, which then leads to a very easy time creating that vertigo. Okay. And so the other one that's a very big culprit is medicines. So making sure that if this medicine is that there's a possibility of major side effect of those kind of situations where it leaches calcium from your body, or it doesn't allow the uptake. Very many different situations. So make sure, looking on the back of the side effects of your medicines, that it doesn't say vertigo, because a lot of times that can be an issue. So hopefully, I think I am almost to the end. Yeah, so we did that on calcium absorption. I'm sorry. So sometimes you're taking a medicine, it doesn't allow for calcium absorption, but then you're taking a calcium supplement. And so that leads your body to a bunch of calcium in your body that it can't get rid of. And so it's going to end up in your fluids. And eventually you'll get it around that ear area. And then when you have too much calcium carbonate, it's very easy to just turn your head just right, and calcium carbonate crystals go into those little gyroscope pieces. Now, we've talked a lot in length, and I will write I will write the situation that most people do as the physical therapy, right? So we didn't even go through that. There's a maneuver called you can look this up. The only reason I didn't do this is because I wanted us to understand it. So if you can YouTube this, this is what most of you are, if you have this is what most of you are going to the physical therapist to have done. It's called Epley's maneuver. Epley's maneuver is a very good way to move those crystals out of those canals that I showed you. Okay. So it's really good to kind of get those calcium carbonate crystals out. But we've never really talked about how do you stop this crap from happening again. Right. And I hope tonight I gave you a good tool. Let's make sure our calcium's correct. Remember, I said, like, through calcium, if you're going to take a calcium supplement, it needs to not be a big dose in the morning, right? It needs smaller chunks because it absorbs very slowly in different time frames. So you want to make sure your calcium intake is correct. You know, those type of situations will make a big difference. So I know, oh man, yeah, Sharon, if you have it, it might be one of the worst conditions, and that's why. I don't know why we didn't talk about this before, but I've seen so in chiropractic, we've seen some amazing things. We just didn't know how to, even in our office or any office, until you start really researching. You're like, oh, these are some things to try to prevent it for long term. You know, I can do the Epley's maneuver on you all day. I can adjust you every few weeks all the time, right? But how do we know, what am I sending you home with that would actually reduce it? And that's what tonight was all about. So hopefully you guys liked this. If you did, give it a thumbs up somewhere. So that would be fantastic. And but yes, this has been a great show. Hopefully I didn't bust you up too bad on the knowledge in here, but hopefully that calcium piece will help a lot. So what are we going to do for our 1% tribe improvement this week? Let's get improving our posture, right? So improving our posture can be fantastic. It can really if we can get those ears back over our shoulders, that could help a ton. Nice, good neck posture movements. If you haven't seen that video, go back to neck exercises. Get our vitamins right. Make sure we're doing it properly. Making sure all those things we're scheduling that out. Get our sugar balanced. Understanding our metabolism. One of the problems is low blood sugar means your metabolism's possibly broken. So go get it fixed. You can do this. There's ways to do it. That's where Dr. Rachel comes in. Her process of balancing out people's metabolism is fantastic. Get evaluated by a chiropractor. That's a really good thing. The other one that's a major, the major one is you get into that upper body fitness. So shoulders and upper back, you want to make sure you're good, and that'll protect a little bit more of our neck posture. Okay. So just make sure, Sue, you're taking it correctly. That was what tonight was about. Everybody could take the amount they're supposed to, but are you supposed to take it 3 times a day? How is your uptake doing? That's the key. But other than that, I hope you enjoyed it. This one was really fun to put together as well. I'm going to try to do more and more like this. You guys rock. Have a great night.